Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Deborah Funk. I'm a Morningside College student, graduate student, and a special education teacher at Palmdale High School. I conducted a study where it addresses the effects of multisensory reading instruction on secondary special education students. The problem that was developed, or the problem that's facing my high school, is the fact that with Common Core standards, there's an expectation that students are starting to read higher academics and need to be able to understand what they're reading. Now, with the fact that my school is very diverse, there's a Hispanic, African American, Caucasian, and other students of different cultural and ethnic backgrounds. My school is dominantly Hispanic. Now, studies have been done. A study was done where the Hispanics and African American students that are hit the ninth grade, they're reading around a sixth to seventh grade level. Now, when they leave high school as a 12th grade, they are reading about an eighth grade level, which versus what they're reading at an eighth grade level, where a Caucasian would be reading at. Now, what happened was that the reason why I selected the study was because of the fact that I was curious how a wide variety of reading instructions or different teaching methods would impact the students' reading comprehension score, because of the fact that the National Reading Panel reported that students need to have 5 areas of literacy skills in phonemic awareness, phonics, decoding, vocabulary, and reading comprehension. Now, there's been a very limited amount of studies done to address this issue for moderate to severe. Which they actually did a study where they looked at all the research between 1973 and 2003, and they only found that 13 studies were done out of 123 that actually addressed or focused on any type of reading instruction for moderate to severe special needs students. Now, the goal of my study was to basically have an additional 30 minutes of supplementary instruction of multisensory strategies and how that impact the moderate to severe students, in addition to the System 44 program that's used at my school. Now, my hypothesis was that an additional 35 minutes of multisensory reading instruction would increase student reading comprehension scores as long as it was added or combined with the System 44 program. My independent variable was the additional 35 minutes of reading and instruction, and then my dependent variable would be the students' reading comprehension scores. Now, when dealing with a literature review, the response to intervention basically establishes that all students need to show growth and development in regards through their academic year. Now, the RTI, most of the research has been studied on the lower grade levels. Now, data for students concerning learning disabilities or any type of abilities, they pretty much are exhibiting very poor academic reading comprehension skills. Okay. Now, there's been three successful programs that were shown. One of them is a review where students were provided multisensory instruction, and it improved their decoding skills of multisyllabic words. Then, in addition to that, they had the associative method, which helps students develop like automatic recall of words or in their language processing. And then Orton and Gillingham reading instruction system was combined with BRSS, where what it did was it increased spelling abilities in older students and helped with their written language. Now, overall, the number of studies that have focused on RTI basically is very limited with secondary students. Multisensory instruction is basically the process where you're adding auditorial, visual, kinesthetics, anything dealing with motor control. And these techniques have to be very specific and very structured when you're providing a specific type of reading intervention to students. Other types of reading interventions that can help students is combining this multisensory approach with like knowledge of text structure, trying to find vocabulary strategies, and then prior knowledge, and then on top of it, of course, motivation. Now, the steps of my methodology for my studies was the participants were a total of 8. They were 9th through 12th graders. They were special education. They are students of low socioeconomic. All my students are on free and reduced lunch, or all the participants were on free and reduced lunch. Principal approval was received in order to conduct the study, and then parents were notified, and permission was granted for the release of 8 of my students' reading scores. And so what happened was, it was conducted over a month period, where it used a design of an ABAB format. Periods week 1 and 3 was when just the System 44 program was implemented, and then weeks 2 and 4 is where System 44 was added with the multi-reading instruction strategy, the additional multi-reading instruction piece. And obviously the System 44 with the multi-sensory instruction was the treatment group, and then just the System 44 instruction was considered the control group, the control trial. In regards to analyzing the results, when you compared phase 1A, which would have been like the first the first control, and phase A2, which was the second control phase. And basically, there was no statistical difference between the two, because the p-value was 0.502, and when analyzing these statistics or using the description, when a dependent t-test was done, you're using an alpha of a 0.05. Now, the median for phase A2, which would have been the second control phase, was 52.63, and the standard deviation was 16.83. Now, phase A, which was the controlled phase for the first period, the mean was 50 even, and then the standard deviation was 18.63. Now, when you compare the two different means, it only showed like a 6% increase. All right, so it really there wasn't a statistical difference to warrant any type of things. Now, when you're dealing with phase B1 and then comparing that to phase B2, once again there was a statistical difference and demonstrating an increase in the student scores, and the T was a negative 4.356, and then the p-value was 0.003. Once again, when comparing it to an alpha level of 0.05, it's showing statistical improvement. And then, like I said, phase B2's median was 66.88, the standard deviation was 14.18, and then for phase B1, the mean was 58.75, the standard deviation was 14.63, and this is showing a significant difference between the two to warrant credibility, showing that there was an increase between treatment 1 phase and then treatment 2 phase. So then when you're analyzing the results of phase B1 to phase A1, basically it's the first portion of control trial 1 and treatment trial 1, and there was a statistic significant difference between the two. It was showing that there was progress in the students' reading comprehension scores, because the p-value was 0.017, and in comparing that with the alpha level of 0.05, it was underneath the alpha level. So phase B1's median was 58.76, standard deviation was 14.36, and then the phase A1's median was 50, and the standard deviation was 18.14. So dealing with those statistics, it's showing that there was a significant difference. And then phase B1 to phase A2 where you're comparing the the treatment group, the first one, to the second control group, A1, there was no statistical difference between the two. And B1 and M, once again, the mean is 58.57, standard deviation is 0.36, and phase A is 52.63, and the standard deviation is 16.83. And then if you look at the chart for phase B1 and phase A2, it goes, like I said, it's kind of going down a little bit. So if you look at first phase A1 to B1, it's showing that the results were going up. Then if you look at phase 1 to phase A2, it's going down. And then, so with dealing and looking at those different things, is it's showing statistically and pictorial the difference between A1 and B1, showing that there's a significant improvement. To warrant some credibility to the effectiveness of 35 minutes of additional instruction. And then when you go from B1 to phase A2, it did go down, but it didn't go down significantly enough when you're looking at all of the statistical analysis and the charts. Now, dealing with phase B2 to phase A1, overall it's showing that there was a significant improvement between the different scores, and the p-value is 0.005 compared to the alpha level of 0.05. That's a major improvement in the scores. And then for the phase B1, B2, which is the last treatment trial, the standard deviation and the mean is 66.88. The standard deviation is 14.18. And then for phase 1A, the mean is 50 and the standard deviation is 18.14. Now, if you're looking at just the graph at the bottom, it's showing that phase 2 has that median of 66.88. And then if you look at the difference between phase B2 to phase A1, there's a huge increase in the student scores. So then if you go on to phase B2 and phase A2, you're showing that there is also an improvement there as well. And it's showing enough statistical improvement because you have a p-value of 0.008 and your alpha level is 0.05. And so B2, the median is 66.88 and the standard deviation is 14.18. And phase A2 and mean is 52.63 and the standard deviation is 16.83. So once again, if you're looking at the graph at the bottom lower right corner, you'll see that there's been an improvement, and it's showing enough improvement, which is reflecting in the p-value 0.008. Now, when you're looking at all the results did show some type of improvement between phase A1 and B1, and then an important statistical difference between phase A2 and B2. The only area where it really didn't show any really significant results was between phase B1 and phase A2. Now, what's the importance of the study? How is this going to help? How's this information going to help, like a research or anything like that? And so when you're tying it back to the different theories of reading, one of them is the dual root cascaded model, or the DRC. And what it is this model basically says that there are two different types of routes of paths that can be taken for a student to process information. And one way is the orthographic route, and this basically is identifying like the whole word patterns and turning it into spoken language, versus the phonological route, where it's combining different skill sets, where it allows you to pronounce a specific word And so how this information applies is because I actually had four of my students where they were able to recall words very quickly, but they struggled with nonsense words. So what they would do is they would take a lot of the nonsense words and try to make them to real words. So that basically meant that they had problems with the their orthographical root was more dominant. And then when I had my two other students who were dealing with just at the phonemic awareness level, it's very obvious that they had problems just with the phonological root because of the fact that they couldn't even, when you put like during their assessment process, it was just kind of guessing. Guaranteed the students tried really hard. They just were struggling with just trying to figure out how many sounds were in a specific word. And I had one student who was autism. Through the entire test, he put 3 blocks during one of his post tests. So literally, it was just 3 blocks. It didn't matter anything along those lines. So now the next one is the direct inferential mediation model, or DIME. And what it is this is actually looking at how like a student background knowledge, their vocabulary, their comprehension, and word fluency, how all of it integrates. And when students have stronger background knowledge and vocabulary and inference skills, the students obviously have stronger reading comprehension. And I only had 2 students that were really dealing with the reading comprehension because all my 6 other kids just didn't have the skill set to, or didn't have the skills to start the higher concept of reading comprehension. They were still working on those other ones of decoding and phonemic awareness skills. So, but with my 2 that were working on reading comprehension skills, they were showing that they had issues with just recognizing certain vocabulary words because during the maze, they were struggling placing or circling the correct word that went and completed the specific reading text. So the limits of my study basically was the time frame, the sample size, different development rates within the student population for lower kids, and then some of the home environment and how certain things played a role, because I had certain students who had decoding skills that were higher, but they're autistic, just like my lower kid student who had autism, and a potential thing is that could have played a role in how it impacted his reading skills. Implications of my studies is participants will increase their reading comprehension skills. The stations for specific multi and sensory instructions that actually addresses, it allowed for the students to have their specific needs addressed more effectively, because once again, there were only 3 stations. There was one for phonemic awareness, one for decoding, and one specifically addressing the reading comprehension. This allowed for a smaller staff to student ratio. And then for educators, now the thing about like my research is the fact that educators need to have the appropriate training. They need to have time management and also administrative support. For time management, what they need is the fact that they need to have enough time to create the manipulatives. They need to have had the appropriate training for multisensory, because of the fact that, sometimes if a thing isn't effectively implemented, it's proven unsuccessful. And the reason why teachers need administrative support is because of the fact that they can get the administrative support through time, sending people to the right training, or even providing specific professional development at a specific time and after school. Suggestions and potential topics for further studies is basically increasing the length of studies from 1 month to like 5 months, having a larger population, not just the moderate to severe special needs, but addressing mild to moderate and moderate to severe, and also even the ELL population, English as a second language for these students. And then the needs of these different learners need to be looked at, and how you do that is addressing and providing different strategies that are implemented through the study, and then also looking at the family support at home, and that can be conducted through surveys and seeing what's going on at home with these different types of kids. And so using those different suggestions, it would further the study on how to address multisensory instruction at the high school level for special needs students. These are my references. That's it.